Julie Edge has been replaced as Education Minister in what the Chief Minister has termed a strategic change. All parties are at pains to mention that this was not a sacking, but Miss Edge responded to news of her departure by saying that as the difficult woman who regularly challenges decisions and offers the public perspective, I'm not surprised. So what is going on? Julie Edge joins me now in the studio. The Chief Minister was a little upset with the way Manx Radio described your departure from the Department of Education. He described it as, he's described it as a strategic change, a reshuffle. The facts, as he sees them, are that Julie Edge has been replaced in what the Chief Minister has termed a strategic change. And he was really quite upset that Manx Radio suggested you'd been sacked. What do you think has happened?
Certainly I can understand why Manx Radio might have used that headline. I must admit I wasn't impressed myself when I first seen it. However, he's saying a strategic reshuffle. I'm certainly, Phil, looking forward to seeing that reshuffle because it's certainly needed. We do need strategic leadership for the island to take the island forward.
And do you think it's going to happen?
Certainly, obviously, I had a pre-declared position on whistleblowing. I've been very clear in my statement that I did ensure that I got confirmation from the Chief Minister that I had that pre-declared position at the latter end of last week. And then if you look at events since that, and I'm aware he did say to me that he'd spoken to Mrs. Kane on Friday. Well, my email was on the Friday, so I'm aware of some of the timeline. And then I did send him an email on Tuesday to say that I might be speaking with regards to the Casey Wright report into the government's handling of Rosalind Ranson. But did it come as a surprise? Well, it would have. I think there's a lot of underhand operations gone on in the background.
Okay, so I mean, basically, you yourself wouldn't use the word sacked. Is that what you're saying?
Well, certainly I don't really understand, and obviously I've not been in this position before. Certainly, I've spoken to the Chief Minister in the last 3 weeks and said, "Do you still have confidence in me?" And he's stated yes. He's told me he stood by me. He's backed me with all of the challenges. And certainly I would expect that when I have done all good governance and good process, and certainly around some of the challenges that we've seen on the floor of either the House Keys or Tynwald that have come at me and calls for my resignation. The facts that I've given out are the correct ones. Some of the ones that sometimes come out or haven't been. So I delivered a coming message to the South, and it seems to have now come back full circle on me.
And perhaps this is the real reason why it was felt, whether it's sacking or a strategic change in personnel or whatever you want to call it, the way in which the announcement of the closure of the Southern Swimming Pool and then the riding into the rescue by the Treasury Minister and yourself, this wasn't government's finest hour, was it?
Certainly, obviously, I wasn't aware of the changes and the U-turn that was talked about and where the money came from, but it appeared. So obviously, my department at that point in time were pleased to continue with that and what was presented. However, the fiscal responsibility that I had to take at that point in time, and that was a decision that was reached by the whole of the Council of Ministers, I took. And I think that's what we need on the island at the present time is fiscal responsibility, leadership and strong, tough decision making.
When something like this happens to you, I don't know. You're better placed than I am to answer this. It must come as quite a personal shock.
Certainly when you've been very loyal to an individual and you've tried to help and you have corrected lots of direction and I've challenged and I've always challenged on governance process. Whistleblowing is a classic example. We've seen two big pieces of and reports that have come out, Casey Brunner's and Casey Wright's, and there's lots of behaviours outlined within them reports. Am I still seeing them? Yes, I am, and that's the disappointing side for me, Phil. I've always been very professional, and I believe we should all be professional in our roles for the greater good of the people of the Isle of Man. And again, did it come as a shock? I could see it coming. I'm astute. I've been a civil servant, public servant for 38 years, 20 of them in leadership in education. But was I disappointed? Probably not, because I think it's time for me to be on the backbenches and start challenging. But I will always do that in a professional manner.
One of the surprising white knights on white horses that came riding over the hill to your, certainly to support you, was your colleague in Onken, Rob Collister. Rob made various comments on social media, pretty much along the lines of, do constituents think that perhaps it's time for a change of leadership at the top of government? Were you surprised by Rob's comment?
Not really. I know people think that Rob and I haven't worked together. We've always worked together closely for Onken. Certainly, I stood by Rob with the report into Tynwald on Rob's situation. He's experienced it. He probably has seen and recognised the similar behaviours towards myself. So I wasn't surprised. I think he's gone out and he's sought views of our Onken constituents with regards to, do we need new leadership at the top? As I've said, we need good strategic leadership for the greater good of the people of the Isle of Man.
And do you think that the Council of Ministers in its current form, and in its new form, is going to give the strategic leadership to the Isle of Man that's so sorely needed?
Well, according to the Chief Minister, he's doing further shuffles, so I'd wait and look forward to see what they are. Certainly, I know where there's areas failing. I think that education certainly isn't now. When I took over education, it was in a dire state, and I don't know how it had been allowed to get like that, but certainly I think there's been great improvements, very professional officers, lots of professional individuals working for the department, whether that's in our schools, whether it's in the department, whether it's in sport and culture, and we've seen it in all of these reports. With regards to whistleblowers, we need to follow the advice of officers. And
it must be difficult for you because you've been a minister for 2.5 years nearly now, and you, as minister, you have to say collegiate things. You've got to be measured in what you say, but you can now perhaps speak with even more openness and honesty than perhaps you were able to before. Is the Chief Minister the right man for the role?
Phil, I've always spoken with honesty, transparency, and I have stuck by the Chief Minister. Can I continue to do that going forward? Probably not. OK, well, that's pretty clear. I suppose something else that we maybe need to move on and talk about then are things that perhaps have been seen as your failings. Now, one of those was something that I raised with you on a Perspective programme only a few weeks back, and I said, with the benefit of hindsight in relation to the whole situation with the Southern swimming pool, is there anything that you would have done or like to have seen done differently? And your answer provoked quite a lot of concern amongst some Tynwald members. Yeah, and certainly I've always respected it, and I still do respect all my colleagues. We've got to work, have a government code, and part of that government code in Annex 2.2, I think it is, that we should always try and resolve issues of any nature between ourselves, and you'd expect that in any professional organisation. I'm aware that there's been some correspondence with the Chief Minister that I haven't necessarily seen, which I think is underhand, and it's certainly not the way I would ever continue to work going forward. Never have worked like that, always worked very professional. And we will have differences in Tynwald. We should be able to have differences. It's a democracy, it's not a dictatorship.
And one of those differences is that certainly some of the Southern members, certainly some that I have spoken to, have said that they felt that the way in which you handled the situation with the Southern Swimming Pool certainly could have been better, and they had hoped that perhaps you might have recognised that there should have been better communication somewhere along the lines, perhaps better communication with the Southern MHKs.
I think there's a lot of myths. As you know, Phil, you've been in the Council of Ministers, and a confidential report and going to discuss with the Southern Swimming Pool, you've got to be confidential about it. I suppose, and it couldn't be helped, on the 9th of January I couldn't be at the presentation to honourable members because my mum was seriously ill, and unfortunately family took priority on that day, as we should all remember. To be quite honest, people never consider what else is going on in people's lives, but we should be very conscious of that as politicians. Could that have been handled differently? I know there's been concern around that. We again addressed to the Chief Minister. I've recently seen some of that. And, if you're aware of a situation that's concerning honourable members, you can respond to it. If you're not aware of it because it's been, delivered behind your back, that makes it difficult. And I just, hopefully we can all work together going forward and be a strong backbench bunch.
So one of the areas that undoubtedly has led to your departure, and let's call it that rather than sacking, because we don't want to upset the Chief Minister on this one, but your departure, it's most likely down to this issue with regard to the Southern Swimming Pool and Castle Rushen High School. How often have you met the Southern MHKs in relation to that over the course of the last few years?
So I was quite clear with the Chief Minister, and he assured me it wasn't with regards to that. That he was doing a mid-term shuffle. So, as I said before, I look forward to seeing that. With regards to over the last 2 years, certainly we delivered the master plan to all honourable members, and that was February 23. Prior to that, I had met with the Southern MHKs in the Speaker's office with regards to the rate that was being paid, and I said I'd work with them. That was quite early on in my tenure, actually, and obviously we would work on that. And then post that, with regards to the pool report, it was led by a steering board which was set up from a Sports Council member, local authority members, officers of my department, and then all officers within all of the local authorities. And I was involved in the meetings along with the Department of Infrastructure Minister, because it was a joint report. It wasn't just an education report, because of the connections with the local authorities and the Local Government Act. I haven't actually met with the Southern MHKs specifically with regards to that steering board. However, at that point, it was still a report that was being created. It was only once the report went through the proper governance and process and into the Council of Ministers that I could actually then speak about it, because that's the confidentiality within the Council of Ministers reports and any report that goes through. So
imagine, though, if this was, let's move back 10, 15 years, and we were talking about Hague School, and which is close to your constituency. And as let's assume that the MHK in charge of the Department of Education, the minister, was a Russian MHK. What would you have expected the education minister to have been doing in relation to involving you with the understanding of the development of that school?
I've said already, we talk about Castle Rock. Bema Hague, when stakeholders got involved with Bema Hague, it's after the design stage. So there's lots of processes happening in a capital build prior to having a design that you can then go and talk to stakeholders about. Obviously, the key stakeholders from a client point of view, as in the Department of Education, Sport and Culture, will be ensuring that the right facility is built for an education setting for the future, and that's adaptable and flexible for future delivery of education. That will come, but there's an expectation it should be there now. That's not how the design team works and how that happens. So, from my point of view, that lack of understanding of how government policies and that operate is quite clear in this current Tynwald. And I think, many times I've said, we're in the design stage. We're in DC1, I think it's called. And, that's where we're at. And stakeholder and meetings publicly and all that will take place, I'm quite certain, further down the line. But, we're a long way from that.
But regardless of all of that, if you were Onken MHK and you felt that there were delays or that it was taking longer than it needed to, you'd be after the education minister, wouldn't you? You'd be pushing them.
Yeah, of course you would. You push for your area. As I say, I delivered the master plan for the South in February 2023. I would have looked at that very closely and queried anything or considered it. I would have kept going. But I haven't seen anything until the swimming pool. And, however, my tenacity and the way that I would have operated is great. I've got a master plan here. I'm going to ask questions about this. I'm going to keep this bubbling along. And, I think it was Tony Brown, ex-Chief Minister, that said on the programme with you that he's been going on about this and there's been complacency, was his words, we've all got to work together for the betterment of education in the South, for the infrastructure for the South, for the community. And, even on the backbenchers, I'll still work for that because that's a decision. However, I have greater opportunity now to shout for the East.
You described yourself in your statement, which came shortly after the announcement that you had been replaced as Education Minister. You described yourself as a difficult woman. And is that maybe a double-edged sword, or as your former colleague for Onken, Peter Carron, would say, a double-edged carrot? Is the part of the problem here that maybe you are seen as a difficult woman and someone that's difficult to get on with?
It's not difficult to get on with, Phil. That's obviously quite a political statement. Difficult, a woman. I think it was Ken Clarke that said it. It's more a strong woman. Some people don't like strong women that stand up to them. I've always said I will stand up for what's right for the people of the Isle of Man, and that's what I will continue to do. I've always done it, and particularly around whistleblowing, I've probably been viewed as she's been difficult here. No, I know my facts. I've done a lot of work around it, and I will protect whistleblowers.
In terms then of your legacy as Education Minister, 2.5 years is not an unreasonable length of time compared with some of your colleagues over the course of the last 2.5 years who've managed much less. What can you look back at over that time? You described entering a department that was in some level of distress. What's changed in that 2.5 years?
I think quite clearly we've really improved the culture. We worked very, very closely with the unions, and that's been very successful. I feel I've stabilised all of that teacher's situation, and that's not something you can just do. You've got to have had experience dealing with unions and working at that level, which I had, being on a leadership team and, various roles in government. I had experience of doing negotiations with unions, so I was, obviously well suited for that. I'd been in the post office and I'd dealt with lots of situations. I think good, strong leadership. and good direction, and ensuring that you understand the department you're in. And that's clearly not just from an education point of view. It's sports, culture and arts. Always had a lot of interest in all of the areas, having worked for 20 years in education, and how critical and crucial sport is as part of the curriculum offering for all of our children. Obviously the infrastructure, I was responsible for all the infrastructure. I've done capital programmes at Ballacomene High School. I completely understand infrastructure and how it works, and also devolved financial management. Being fiscally responsible within an education environment is really important. Certainly I can say that. I've brought forward a quality assurance framework which will be independently validated, and that's an excellent framework. It's being piloted at the current time. I've been successful in getting some additional funding. Obviously, the childcare strategy is another one. And the one which I probably will be most disappointed about is the skills board. And, actually trying to push that forward. It's been difficult with it being cross-government. However, I think we're there now. It is an education and industry way forward for skills on the island. But it all starts with educating and investing in our young people. And, really pleased to say that we've got Ardwallen open again. That's been a 2.5-year challenge, but I ensured that the investment was put forward there. We've got gas training back on the island. So there's been lots of real good positive delivery. And I think I will always stick to my promises to the people of Onchan. My manifesto, I will deliver, and I think I can honestly say that I have delivered in my 2.5 years. I've enjoyed it. I've worked with amazing professional people, and I will continue to challenge where people challenge the officers unfairly. I will always stand up for that, and recently I've done that a couple of times, and I did wonder in the back of my mind whether that was an element of that as well. But I will stand up for what's right, principled and transparent, and we will. Delivery, and the master plan for Castle Rushen is out there. It's been there for a long time, but it's out there now, and I'm proud to say that I looked at that whole site, and there's something that can be delivered there.
Final question then. Do you regret accepting Alf Cannon's invitation to become the Education Minister?
No, because I think that I've achieved a lot. I've worked with amazing political colleagues. Claire Christian, thank her for all of her support. I was pleased that Paul Crane could come on because we were all from education, and that makes a massive difference. Phil, having been in government, if you've got the knowledge base and the expertise in the area, it makes the job that much easier. You get a difficult question thrown at you on the floor, or members think it's difficult. If you've got that knowledge and experience, it's not difficult. So from that point of view, it's been a pleasure and an honour to serve in that role. Would I have done it any differently? No, because at the outset I said I wanted to continue with my pre-declared position on whistleblowing and conflicts of interest, and I've done that. So, however, this latter week it does seem to have been challenged. So I wasn't surprised in that instance. But good governance, good process, good leadership, strong leadership for the island is what we need.
Are you convinced then that Alf Cannon, going forward as Chief Minister, is going to make the right decisions for the future of the island?
I've always had respect for him. I do think that there's major issues, major tough decisions that need to be taken fiscally, mainly, and the budget, I think, has the public don't seem to be impressed with elements of the budget. I do think it's going to be very tough 2.5 years, and fiscal responsibility for the island, moving the island forward in the right direction, but with the right investment, not wasted investment.
Is this the start of a much-needed reshuffle of the Council of Ministers? Will more ministerial heads roll? Or is this just a convenient way to get an unpopular budget off the headlines? Let me know your thoughts on the programme by contacting Phil Gorn at manxradio.com, and get in touch if you have any ideas for future shows. Don't forget this programme is available as a podcast on Manx Radio's website. For now though, I'm Phil Gorn. Go to Mayo. Thanks for listening.